Hi there, welcome to part 5 of my ongoing series breaking down the music in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's been a fun ride so far, and I am so grateful to the folks that are tuning in and leaving comments on these vids. This stuff is super niche, and I really appreciate each and every one of you who loves this stuff as much as I do. Speaking of, on my last video, someone posted a comment mentioning that the first track I covered last episode was actually released as part of a sampler CD for Tokyo Game Show last year. The track is called Mako Spring, and confirms that it was arranged by Shotaro Shima. The person deleted their comment shortly after. I'm not sure if they did that by accident or on purpose, but I just wanted to say thank you for pointing that out to me. I've updated my spreadsheet with that information. Also, this messes up my already fickle numbering scheme of the unknown tracks, so maybe they deleted their comment to spare me the embarrassment. Man, I should probably find a better way of labeling these tracks going forward. Anyhow, thank you to that commenter. Okay, I told myself I would get through all the remaining tracks of Chapter 1 in this episode, and there are quite a few left, more so than a typical episode, so let's jump in. We're back in Calm with Cloud in the party. Tifa makes a curious comment that gives both her and Cloud a moment of hesitation, which is followed up by the start of our next new piece. This seems to be a new musical idea that skirts around a couple familiar themes without fully landing on them. Once you head outside, the track transforms into On That Day 5 Years Ago. This is a lovely arrangement that stays quite faithful to the original. This is an aside, but I have to take a moment to briefly talk about my favorite version of On That Day 5 Years Ago. That would be Final Fantasy VII Remake's Just Another Job by Yuichi Tsuchiya. Some of the best uses of strings in all of Remake, and the nylon guitar is a perfect complement to the harp. I always found it strange that the only time this phenomenal track plays is while chatting with Jessie before starting the Chapter 4 topside mission to, get the blueprints to the Death Star or whatever that was about. It's such a strong piece, and I wouldn't be surprised if it shows up again in Rebirth. I get distracted easily with this stuff. Anyhow, this Rebirth version of On That Day 5 Years Ago sounds great, but what's even cooler about it is hearing it get progressively moodier as you progress further and further into Shinra Manor. The romantic strings soften and a somber cello becomes the new lead. Once you reach the basement, the mix gets even gnarlier and more dissonant, leaving you with horror pads and a slow pulsing bass note, similar to what we'd heard a few times in the reactor in my last episode. The track ends as you reach Sephiroth. And just as quickly, a new piece begins. This is a mysterious, almost gentle variation of Jenova's theme laced with intrigue. This track sounds more obviously like a Shima one to me, especially the new string melodies at around this part. After 7 days of Cloud doing, I'm not sure what exactly, he decides it's finally time for Sephiroth, toiling his days away in the Shinra Manor basement, to face the music. It's another somber piano track inside the Nidhogg Inn. Cloud reaches the manor. The choir and dissonant accents tell us Sephiroth might have spent a bit too much time alone reading up Shinra conspiracy theories. As Sephiroth recounts the origins of the calamity from the sky, a piano arpeggiates over the main chord progression of the Jenova theme. Keep your ear out for the patented Shima synth tone. Afterward, we hear a choir chanting the alien's name as something seems to happen to Sephiroth. As an unsettling placidity settles over him, a bassoon, at least I think it's a bassoon, guides the track's transformation from one solely about Jenova to one about both Jenova and Sephiroth. The takeover is seemingly complete. Cloud chases after Sephiroth, and upon exiting the manor finds a countryside up in smoke. The heartbeat kick drum and clock tower bell immediately tell us this is likely going to develop into those chosen by the planet. As he approaches the village in flames, familiar strings and choir fade in. There's not too much to say about this. Sounds pretty perfect to me. There are several dynamic triggers as Cloud slowly shuffles his way across the burning village, adding new layers to the mix. Soon after, we get embellishments to the main melody. The track strips back to a simpler rhythmic setup before coming to a close at the next cutscene trigger. Cloud looks up at his childhood home, we hear another brief variation of the nostalgic anxiety motif. Listen out for the bassy two-note creep of Those Chosen by the Planet as well. We finally get to one of the most iconic cutscenes from Final Fantasy VII, beautifully remade in Rebirth. The distorted bass drop feels very epic Hollywood trailer to me, but I think it mostly works. As Cloud crawls towards Sephiroth and the Mayor, you can hear Rebirth's favorite One-Winged Angel melody played low on the bass, hiding underneath the high-pitched wails and squeaks of the strings and brass. The melody becomes more pronounced as you reach the cutscene trigger. After the Mayor's execution, the piece fully reveals itself as an appropriately menacing and downright dangerous arrangement of Those Chosen by the Planet. The lead violin plays a new line. That new melody sounds a bit like the other new line we heard a couple of tracks ago. And they are certainly similar, but I don't think it's the same. If it shows up again, then maybe we can start speculating as to what this new Jenova Sephiroth fusion hybrid motif means, but for now I think it's a bit inconclusive, with me leaning towards coincidental. Next, as the camera follows the framing of the original 1997 cutscene, we finally get, I think, our first taste of One-Winged Angel's main motif. The way the choirs divide up the melody reminds me a lot of how the same melody is first presented in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Alright, it's time for one last big dramatic cutscene to round out the Nibelheim flashback sequence. This is a masterful 5-minute piece of music that I don't feel comfortable talking over. So instead of constantly cutting in with my voice, I'm going to let this one play out in full, uninterrupted, with text commentary on the screen instead. Feel free to pause if the text is too fast, or just ignore what I wrote and just bask in it. We return to present-day calm as the party ponders the ambiguous finale to Cloud's story. I would like to remind everyone we are only about an hour into Rebirth, and we now have a fourth unique arrangement of anxiety. This version of anxiety plays it pretty straight until Aerith not so subtly tries to change the subject. At which point we pivot to an uncharacteristically upbeat, major key version of the Final Fantasy VII main theme. From this point on, there is a sort of push and pull as the track hops between anxiety and the FF7 main theme, perhaps the former representing Tifa's emotions and the latter Aerith's? I don't know. Neither motif wins out in the end as we resolve on an ambiguous uncertainty fitting of Rebirth. Later that night, Tifa tells Cloud she'd like to talk to him alone. As Cloud follows her out of his room, he catches a glimpse of a familiar face. This is a reused track from Remake, first used when Cloud is planting the Mako Reactor 1 bomb and gets interrupted by a similar vision. This track didn't make it onto the original Remake soundtrack release, but it was included in the Final Fantasy VII Remake Original Soundtrack Plus release, which came out almost exactly 7 months after the original soundtrack. Since the Rebirth soundtrack came out in April, does that mean the Rebirth Plus soundtrack will come out in November of this year? I sure hope so. As you step out onto the balcony, you can spot a double bass player and tenor saxophonist letting loose. Since the music they're making is diegetic, I had to go into the system settings and turn up the sound effects again to actually be able to hear what they're playing. They're playing a jazzy arrangement of the appropriately named Lurking in the Darkness. I initially thought they had just taken the jazz arrangement of the track you can find as a jukebox track in Remake and removed everything but the sax and bass from the mix, but upon closer listening of both, they're pretty different. This stripped-down diegetic version is about 15% stankier than the Remake version. I do love those jukebox tracks, though. As you catch up with Tifa on the roof of the hotel, it's finally time for the last track of Chapter 1. Luckily, we end on a high note, so let's go through it. We start on a soft, spacious piano, whispery strings, and I think a clarinet. There's also what sounds like a soft synth pad layer, but it could just be reverb from the strings. But just like the Materia Guardian track from the last episode, this one throws a curveball by suddenly pivoting to an existing track as well. Not just any remake track, this one is more specifically an intergrade track. This is A Hero Lost from Yuffie's Intermission. Or at least that's clearly the project file Shima loaded up when he started working on this scene. There are slight changes here and there, and most obviously and importantly, they remove all references to Yuffie. Those sections have been substituted with stronger ties to Tifa. The cutscene ends and the beautiful track loops again. I'm so glad this is where we leave things because it perfectly encapsulates so much of the Rebirth soundtrack experience. Masterful weaving of leitmotifs, thoughtful repurposing of ideas from Remake, immaculate arrangements, clean mixes. This has been such a great start to the Rebirth soundtrack. So let's look at our spreadsheet one last time. If we exclude the Zack Prelude and the reused remake tracks, I counted 30 pieces of music in Chapter 1 of Rebirth, only 6 of which made it onto the original soundtrack. Wow, that's a lot of music. Like, Chapter 1 is what, about an hour or so long, right? That is an absolutely outrageous amount of music. That's more music than many video games have across their entire runtime. That's a God of War's worth of music. And the wildest thing is that all of this is free. You don't need to buy Rebirth to have access to all of this. The free demo on the PlayStation Store gives you access to just about the entirety of Chapter 1. Square Enix is giving this away because ultimately this is a mere drop in the bucket of the entire Rebirth soundtrack experience, which I must admit has given me pause regarding how to move forward with this series. I knew the Rebirth score was going to be massive, how could it not be after Remake? But this is just beyond the pale. This has to go down as the biggest soundtrack of all time, right? And not just any video game, like any piece of media, right? This is huge. And the most terrifying part? None of this is slop. It is uniformly pretty damn good, frequently excellent. In the world of AAA gaming in the 2020s, I'm legitimately surprised this thing exists. So what comes next? Good question. For sure, my next objective is doing a video or two covering the 2 pieces of DLC for Final Fantasy XVI. That should keep me busy for the next couple months, since I haven't even finished playing those yet. But after that, what to make of Chapter 2 and beyond of Rebirth? Realistically, at my current rate, it would take me years to cover every song in Rebirth. Another approach would be doing 1 or 2 meaty videos per chapter, obviously not covering every track like I just did, but going over the highlights in that chapter, like the more memorable ones, and discussing overall patterns and themes. So that's another angle I could approach these videos, right? I don't know yet, and I likely won't know until later, but please let me know what you think. Your feedback is super valuable to me. Also, these videos take a long time to make and do not get many views in the YouTube grand scheme of things. This stuff is hyper niche, so I'm not expecting massive numbers, but if you enjoy these videos and know of other folks that are freaks about video game music like us, I would greatly appreciate it if you shared them on social media or forums or subreddits or whatever. Anyhow, that's enough begging. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into all the music of Chapter 1 of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I had a blast making these videos. I learned a lot, and I hope you did as well. See you folks later. I look forward to Chapter 2 and getting to talk about Chadley's theme. Bye!